Hey, we go.
Hold on, glass. Glossies, it's Allie Renee. I'm back with the glass with Allie Renee.
We're gonna start that over.
We are here with
Abia!
Yes! And I have an interesting topic today. I wanted to talk about the roles of a man and a woman. What do you feel about
Nicki Minaj.
girl? What do you feel is masculine, the femininity, the roles of a man and a woman? How do you feel about marriage? So what's your overall, what do you feel makes a man masculine and a woman feminine?
What do I feel makes a man masculine? I would say, what makes a man masculine has a lot to do with sacrifice and self-control. That is a lot. That has a lot to do with masculinity. Not that women can't possess those qualities either, because we all should. But something about a man being sacrificial with his time, his resources, even his emotional capacity, that really speaks to me. I would say too, of course, protecting. I believe a man should be providing in the context of marriage. Because I ain't living with no boyfriend, I'll tell you that right now. Because no judgment, but I ain't living with no boyfriend. But I say that because I know myself, and I know that I'm gonna want to clean our house. I'm gonna want to wash our clothes. I'm gonna want to cook for you out of love, not because it's my duty, but I'm going to want to do all these things for you. But I can't imagine washing my boyfriend's underwear.
I feel you. And that kind of ties in with, like, don't be a girlfriend until you're a girlfriend. Or don't be a wife until you're a wife.
Yeah.
Because it's like, sometimes you'll get into that situation where you're doing it out of love, and I feel the same way. But it's like, what's going to make them make that next step, that next commitment, if you're already doing all the things that a wife's going to be doing. So
exactly. But also, too, I used to always say, because obviously I love to cook, I'm a chef, so I would always say I can't imagine cooking for a man who's not my husband. But then I had to kind of like reel back and be like, okay, somebody gave me such wise wisdom one day. And they were like, treat your boyfriend as you would treat like your best friend. And I don't know about you, but I go above and beyond for my friends. Mm-hmm. So to treat this man differently would kind of be like, well, like it would kind of make me curious, like there's something there. There's something deeper to think about there. So, yeah, maybe for his birthday, I will bake him a beautiful cake. Or, if we decide to have a date night in, maybe I'll make dinner. Or we can both make dinner and make it, an activity to do together. But as far as, like, packing his lunch for work, no, baby, I'm going to need a ring. I'm going to need a ring for that. I'm going to need a ring for that one, And, personally for myself, I do, my intention is to wait to marriage, to be intimate with my significant other. So that also makes things a little harder in this day and age. But I have seen the value of, because let me tell you, I'm a recovering independent woman who did not need no man.
Okay. Amen.
So once I really stepped into my femininity, it really connected me to how really sacred my sexuality is. And how, I don't want to share that with anybody who's not committed to me. But also, too, I think of, God's purpose for sex. And that was also to procreate. So I'm like, if I want to procreate with somebody, we need to be married. Yeah. I don't want to end up, getting pregnant and being unsure with my partner and being like, well, are you going to help me? Are you going to stick by my side? Yeah. So I just want that sanctity and that sureness of a marriage,
Yeah, and it's like that's forever. Like when you become just a baby mama, or you have a baby that that's gonna be involved in your life forever. And if that person isn't the right person, like I firmly believe, past everything, the person you choose to be your partner is the most important decision you make in your life.
In your life. It will make or break you.
Exactly. It's going to be a huge influence. It can control you. It's going to control how you think, how you live your life, the energy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so important. And that's why it's like when people are just like, kind of just flinging everywhere, having babies with anybody, like past casual hookups, like that's a different conversation, but like just having kids with anybody just to have the kid or just to lock him in for his money.
Yes, I was gonna say there are some pretty crazy motives there.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely kids, sex, all that for me is in context of a marriage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what do you feel, what makes a woman feminine?
Gosh, this is going to be controversial, but what makes a woman feminine is, and I've had to learn this because it's something I struggled, is the ability to not always want to problem solve immediately. The ability to have an opinion, but not always share it if it's not asked for. You know, again, these kind of fall into the self-control things, but more, you know, the ability to, kind of like how we were talking earlier, the ability to not pursue a man, right? Like, I'm not going to be texting you if you're not texting me back, or, you know, the ability to, the ability to be soft and gentle and not jump to accusations. And also I think what really makes femininity that softness is not having the thinking of dichotomy, thinking like it's black or white, because men think very black or white. I think women offer that type of inclusivity when they start, well, it's situational, or it's this, or it's that. Women really offer that flexibility in topics of conversation, arguments, whatever it may be. I think that's what makes a woman feminine. Because I know when I was an independent woman who did not need no man, I feel like nobody could tell me nothing. You couldn't tell me because of my experience that I lived, of the things that I've gone through. And I remember one thing that somebody told me was, you kind of live like it's you against the world. And once I kind of stepped out of that mentality, like, oh, it's not me against the world. It's actually making the world what I can, you know. It's thinking more positively, optimistically. It's not saying that men are negative, but they're more streamlined in thinking.
Yeah.
So yeah, once I started stepping into that mentality, I'm like, oh, is this what being feminine?
Yeah.
You
so
know?
it's like bringing peace.
Yes.
And just calmness.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
So what made you step into that? Like, how did you?
Honestly, just probably a bunch of failed relationships. Because, and I think many women can say this, I recognize my beauty. I recognize my abilities as far as domestic. I can cook, I can clean, I recognize I'm educated, like I recognize certain things like that. I have a great career. But then when I realize, why aren't these qualities making my relationship successful? Like I kind of was like, wait, why do I have all these check marks but I still struggle in relationship? And one of the biggest reasons was, you know, I wasn't vulnerable. I was not willing to be vulnerable. Yeah. And also I probably wasn't a safe space myself for others to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I also had preconceived notions. Like, yeah, there were men who I absolutely loved, but I would even tell them things like, well, when you cheat on me, or when you do this, and it's kind of like, good men are like, girl, why are you telling me these things? Like, these aren't my intentions.
Right.
But it's like, well, because of my preconceived notions, I already have that expectation for you just because you are a man.
That is, girl. I feel like that's such a good realization that you're aware of that, because I feel like with society right now, it's like we all see like independence is awesome. It's always great to have your own money, have your own life, but it's like, I feel like to an extent we're like trying to force too much independence, and like what you're saying, it's like you can be beautiful, you can have a great personality, you can be funny, but it's like I don't need you, I don't need a man. And it's like we kind of become just so closed off, and it's like the vulnerability is so important, and like being able to be that peace for a man. It's like sometimes I know like whenever I've spoke with men about what they want, it's never necessarily what we think that they want.
No.
They just want peace.
Yeah.
They just want peace.
Yeah.
And it's like they want someone they can come home to and get that support. They want to feel calm from the day. Like that's what I've gotten. But I feel like with like TikTok and stuff, it's all about like, it is like, I can say that I've had that mindset of all men are cheaters, all men are bad, and it's not true. And it's like I'm trying to get my mindset off of that because I base it off of one experience. Yeah. Or
experiences.
Maybe with plural, but it's like not all men are bad.
But also too, sometimes it's not even our experiences; it's experiences that we have seen.
Exactly.
So like my mom divorced my biological dad. So for me, I already grew up thinking, well, these men
ain't it. They ain't it.
So, but then, listen, God will redeem everything. And this is a good segue into the next conversation is the man my mom married, my stepfather. He was just an incredible husband to my mom. I mean, he was so chivalrous and proposed to her in such a beautiful way. Aww. 2 weeks before the wedding, got her an apartment, moved on all her stuff. Wow. They got married, moved into the apartment, okay? We stayed there, I want to say maybe 2 years, maybe at most, if I'm remembering correctly. Then he bought her a big old house, and we all moved to that big house. Yeah, girl, I will say, and I just want to make it clear, he is not a rich man. He is not like wealthy or anything like that, but he's financially responsible, and he was preparing for his wife before he met her.
I love him already, girl.
So
I love him.
So whenever these men talk about, oh, in this economy, how do you expect a full provider? Because I've seen it. Because I remember when we did live in the house for about a year, I ain't gonna lie, we were eating cup of noodles, but we were in a safer area. We had a home of our own. Like, they were homeowners now, you know. So it's like you make short-term sacrifices for what you want in the long term, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I grew up seeing a full provider, masculine husband. And to this day, my stepdad brings my mom her favorite peach-colored roses with the glitter on top. Aww, 20 years later, so...
Keeping the love alive.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So when people tell me, oh, well, times are different, baby. Not for me.
I'm still believing.
Yeah.
My godly man is out there.
Yeah, right. My godly man is his savings, they growing right now.
Girl. I'm dead.
His credit is going up right now.
Going up, baby.
In the name of Jesus.
Hallelujah. I love that. Yeah. Well, yeah. So what would you say for someone who grew up with broken parents? Like, for me, I'd say my parents divorced at such a young age. Yeah. So I vaguely remember them being together. So as far as me seeing a healthy relationship between a man and a woman, it's like, what would you say for people like that? Like, if they haven't seen it, like, how should they perceive that? And I feel like sometimes women, that can make us super independent, because it's like, they see their mom, like, she has to provide, and she's able to provide for her 4 kids without a man. Like, how do they change their mindset to that?
So for me, I always knew. So my mom found a great husband later on. Of course, nothing's ever perfect. Right. So I know for me, I was able to see some things in her marriage that I was like, oh, I don't know if I would want that in my marriage, or I don't know if I would do or like raise my kids this way, or, you know, things like that. So what I did, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've always been one to, like, if I could imagine it, I know it has to be out there in a realistic context. So for me, I'm like, God, I know there is a godly man who marries a godly woman and who they can raise their kids in a way and have a marriage that they really value, right? Or that I believe, that I can see in my head. So I'm like, okay, if I see it, I can believe it. So I remember I prayed, I prayed it, and I wrote it down in my journal. I said, God, I pray for specifically a godly spiritual woman who is married and, you know, who may have a kid or is pregnant, whatever. So about, I don't know, maybe 6 months later, I get a DM from this random woman, and she happens to be a Hispanic Mexican woman. I'm Mexican, and she is a godly woman. She was currently pregnant at the time, and I remember I found her fascinating because she worked out up into her, like, last week of, you know, giving birth, and I was like, wow, I want to be that type of mother who values health, who values. And then she would share videos about how her and her husband every 2 weeks or so, they have meetings about, hey, what could I have done better this week or this past week? Or how can I help you this week? Or, hey, we have a shift in schedule. How can we help each other? How can we serve each other? So I was like, wow. So long story short, we ended up becoming friends. And I really prayed for this woman mentor. And the funny thing is that I've always been attracted to, like, Arab men, Middle Eastern men. She's a Mexican woman married to a Syrian Palestinian man.
What?
I know.
Look at God.
Oh my God, you are funny.
Oh,
you are funny.
Gosh.
So not only have they become my mentors, but they are just such great friends, and I learned so much. I mean, they are a safe space to have, you know, that I can have too, because I can ask them hard questions, like about pregnancy, about, you know, sex life in a marriage, about what do you guys see as infidelity, right? Because you want to hear from people who are older and wiser than you. What do you guys think about how to raise your kids in a culture like today? You know, so I always ask them the hard questions that maybe not everybody would want to answer, but because they are open, and they also know the importance of, well, if we share, this is wisdom, right, to be had, to be learned from. So, yeah, I would say pray for a mentor and be specific with God. Be so specific with God.
Specific.
And girl, when I tell you, I was like, God, you are funny.
You are
funny.
Yay.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you think of marriage, do you think of it as a partnership? How do you look at marriage, or how do you look at the roles in marriage?
So I think of marriage, obviously I'm very strong in my faith, so to me a marriage was created by God. So to me, in marriage is a covenant that two people make, a promise to God to serve Him in the context of a marriage. Because I know people say, gosh, be loyal to me or be honest to me. I feel like I would always tell my husband, serve the marriage rather than serving me. Like, prioritize our union rather than prioritizing me as a person, because at the end of the day, I'm flawed too. I could say something I don't mean. I could make a decision that may not be the best interest for either of us. So at the end of the day, I'm going to need a husband who's going to prioritize our union before our personhood. So that also means sacrificially. So, you know, this is very controversial, but I was asked one day, you know, if your husband was, you know, fully in a position to provide and you want to have kids, and he asked you, I really want you to stay home with the kids, like, would you be willing to give up your career? And I really had to think about it, but thinking of how much I value family and kids over my career, my answer would be, yeah, I would be able to lay down my career that I have worked so hard for almost a decade now, and I would be able to lay it down, and not for the sake of pleasing my husband, but for the sake of valuing my family, right? Yeah. So being there for my kids and how can I help make my husband's life a little bit easier, a little bit lighter, so that he can go and be able to work and be, you know, good, and how can we nurture our marriage. So I always say, people put the focus on the person. If you put the focus on the union and what God has brought together, like, let no man separate, you know?
Yeah.
So it really takes the pressure off, too. Because it's like, oh, I'm not trying to please my husband. I'm trying to please God through this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to think about it. So I completely agree with that as well. Like, I've thought of the whole, like, I know that I've always want to have my own money. I want to have my own. I love my career, but at the same time, I know that could be really hard having a family and stuff.
Yeah.
But there is a fear in me, which I feel like a lot of people have.
Yeah.
It's like, if we are with a man and we let go of that and now we're completely dependent on him for finances, what's going to happen if there's a bump in our road in the marriage and he messes up and we have all our dependency on him? Like, what would we do in that moment? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I think, well, one, I think this starts in the dating stage where you really have to find somebody who's genuinely equally yoked as you. So you guys have to agree in the beginning, what is infidelity? Because, for example, for me, I see you viewing pornography as infidelity. Some couples might not see it like that. So if we're on the same page with infidelity and what it is, I think that it's a good start.
Yeah.
But also, too, I really would say, for example, if a man is really committed to his family and his future life, I would say there has to be an agreement up front. There has to be, you know, I know married couples who, when they get married, the first year or two, they're like, hey, let's start planning for your, like, my wife's retirement. You know, if you're not going to be working, let's start putting money into that, right?
Yeah.
Or do you have health insurance, you know, or do you have life insurance? So, you know, these are all things that I got for myself, I don't know, maybe when I was like 20, 21, so that later my husband won't necessarily have to worry about that. But also, too, I always think, if I could do it for myself, I would expect a man to do it for me, too. You know what I'm saying? So if my husband's like, hey, do you want a savings account for a future business that you may want to do when the kids turn 5? It's like, oh, cool, like, let's put money into that account. So it's kind of like making sure your name is tied to every single thing, making sure that expenses are completely transparent. I'm a believer in that. I'm not a believer in separate bank accounts. I'm a believer in putting everything together, because the thing about marriage and legally binding is that you're going to second guess when your flesh gets weak. Yeah. When you start scrolling through Instagram, when you start feeling lonely, when you start, you know,
all them titties, coochie is everywhere.
So when you listen, first of all, one, I trust God. So I always trust, if you're acting a fool, God's gonna let me know. Yeah. But also, too, I really have to trust that, okay, like, you won't see ass, you gonna see titties on Instagram, you gonna see it everywhere. You gonna see it at Erewhon, okay? Like,
literally,
you're like Erewhon, Walmart, it may be some different titties and ass.
Girl,
but you don't see it. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, go ahead,
do it.
What you gonna do? Like,
and that's the thing. I think what goes back with, like, femininity is, don't try to prevent your partner from cheating.
Yeah.
Don't, like, do all the things, like, always staying up his crack trying to figure out what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna find a way to cheat.
Yeah.
Like, there's no going around it, and it's like, you stress yourself out trying to figure out, like, God is gonna, like you said, God is gonna show you.
Yeah.
What you need to see, God is gonna show you.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and I always say, too, when you're dating someone, like, the flags are there.
oh yeah,
The flags are there.
we ignore them.
Yeah.
We ignore them.
So, you know, it's cute if you're ignoring them, if you're like, I don't want to marry this man, but if you want to marry someone, girl, pay attention to the flags. And I'm not saying that all red flags are reasons to leave. Because it's, for
Mm.
me, I have learned that red flags are actually reasons to get curious.
Mm.
Yeah. So I've learned too that part of femininity is not dipping when things go wrong.
Oh,
that was
that's
a huge
good.
one.
Okay.
I used to be you know how they say fight or flight? I'm flying.
yeah.
I'm getting in a plane to get, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So I've learned that femininity too is like, hey, like I've noticed that you don't call me every day like you used to. Like, what is there a reason? Instead of being like, you don't like me anymore. Like, what's your problem?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, hey, my dad's been really sick lately. I just haven't had the capacity. And it's like, okay, well, this makes me feel really insecure when you don't call me. And I really would appreciate if you prioritize at least a 5-minute phone call with me every day just so I can hear your voice. And how they respond to that will tell you what you need.
Everything.
Yeah.
Communication,
Yeah.
girl. It's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's, girl. I feel like it's so tough. Like, what red flags would you say are, like, no, versus curiosity?
I would honestly say 3 things that you shouldn't compromise on is health, finances, and faith.
Mm.
So, for example, if I meet a man and he's like, yeah, I don't really care about health, you know, and you see his eating habits, he's eating out all the time, I'm not going to get in a marriage with you because I don't want to fight with you.
Yeah.
And also, that turns into just eating habits, but then later on when you have kids, it turns into what are you teaching your kids? What are you now giving your kids? So, you know, it's internal conflict like that. I'm sorry, but I don't want a husband who has a heart attack at 47.
Yeah.
You know, I have to think about myself in that sense too. Or, for example, faith. I can't see. I've dated so many people outside of my faith. And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. At the end of the day, these men left me because of faith. I mean, other things too, but they left me because of faith. So it's like, well, this is their standard. Let me make my faith a standard now.
Amen.
Let me prioritize my faith, and you know what? Like, hey, make this a non-negotiable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And finances. Girl, I've heard men say, you know, it's just not, like, money's just not that important to me. Or money's just not, or I believe in 50-50. I'm a 50-50 guy. I'm just, and I always, not that I have to explain myself to these men, but I always base myself. I grew up seeing my mom taken care of. I grew up seeing my grandma taken care of. So it is a standard. Because I have seen and lived it, I do feel like it's a desire that I want for myself, you know, because I've seen it. I feel like it is different if you have never seen it or if you have bad intentions. Like, if you have city girl motives and you just want to be a cute wife perched up, that's different. But if you genuinely want to, it's almost like, okay, you want a man's money for the rest of your life. What do you have to give to this man for the rest of his life? Like,
you are bringing to the table,
exactly.
baby.
Like, you are now a liability.
Mm-hmm.
When you marry a man who's providing, you are now a liability in so many ways. And again, things like legally binding. For example, you always hear stories of, well, he died and all his money went to his mom. And it's like, oh no, when we get married, all that, we won. We are one person.
One.
So if you die, that money's coming to me and my kids.
Yeah.
You know, and it's always like, the spiritual is just as important as the legal, is just as important as the physical. It all encompasses together for security, for safety, and for peace of mind.
Yeah. Wow. So, how do you feel when someone's asking what is a woman supposed to bring to the table when it's the man providing in a marriage?
Well, I always think of first what are basic human needs and then what are a man's needs. So one, everybody thrives in a clean environment, right? So at least have the desire to keep things tidy.
Right.
Cook, because one, not because it's a woman's duty to be in the kitchen, but because one, by cooking, you are stewarding your health better, you're stewarding your finances better, and you are now being able to create, like God calls us to create. If you don't like cooking, think of it as an act of service for your husband. Like, hey, I'm gonna learn, or I'm gonna, do this. I would also say, before even getting in a marriage, y'all, mental health. Like,
oh yeah,
get your mental health. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you don't have to have any red flags or anything. But it's like, if you happen to believe that all men are cheaters, or that your husband will divorce you one day, or if you still have, mother wounds, father wounds, sexual abuse to process through, don't even date.
yeah.
Like,
'Cause you're bringing that into
yes.
a relationship.
Yes,
you're bringing that baggage.
You are bringing that baggage, and with that, you also are accusatory to a person whom you love, who's also flawed.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, nobody's perfect. A wife and a husband is not perfect. But I would also say women should really know how to speak. Because yes, there are a lot of good women who can do all these things, but they degrade their man all the time, especially in front of other people. Like, well,
oh, yeah. Screaming at him.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, his feet be he goes home and, telling everybody. And you're like, and here's this man who's, putting a roof over your head, feeding you, but also, like, being a present father and being with you emotionally, and you're going to over here be airing his dirty laundry out like that. That to me is actually sad. And as a Hispanic woman, it's very common for women to do that. And I never want to put my husband in that position, because I know for women, for example, if my husband was like, well, she ain't want to sleep with me for 3 weeks now. I don't know what's wrong with her. When really I could be going through something really deeply profound.
Exactly.
And you're just airing out all her dirty laundry.
That's a big thing. I feel like people can be a little too open with their relationship issues. Like, as soon as you open that to external people, like, it's just going to ruin your relationship. Because it's like, even with someone who you're really close to, you may just be saying your side, and it may be coming out of anger. You might heighten up the story a little bit. And it's like, now that person has this look on the person that you love, and it can just alter everything, and then it's going to alter your opinion. But it's also great to have your friend support and advice, but I completely agree, like, just not embarrassing them for whatever reason. But.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of arguments would be mended quicker if we literally took the stance of how God wanted us to be in a marriage, which is, men, literally die to yourself. Like, just how Christ died and loved the church. The church is so imperfect, yet God loves her. Like, all the things that go on in the church, yet God still loves us. So, there may be so many things going on with me, but I have that expectation of my husband to still love me. Just like, if he has things going on, if he, like, let's say, gets fired, or his mom passes away, his dad passes away, there's so many things, or let's say something like he gets hurt at work, he can't work for, I don't know, a year. It's like, how do you manage those things, And those are real situations. Or even things like, what if we have a disabled child? Then what? That adds a whole nother thing to a marriage. So it's like, I have that expectation that I will make sacrifices for my husband and my family, but I expect that same from my husband. And with that, a lot of arguments can kind of just be dismantled, because there's no longer, okay, you're right, or I'm wrong, or you're wrong, I'm right. It's more so just like, what is this argument? How is this serving our marriage? Is it wasting our time? Okay, like, let's just forget about it. Let's put our egos to the side, and let's work on towards changing, improving, investing, whatever it may be, and build from there.
That's so amazing. I feel like the way you're looking at it is a much healthier way, because I think a lot of people see it as, like, a woman's like, oh, he provides everything for me, I just sit and I look cute. And it's like, I think that's been, like, the wrong vision on it, and that's what a lot of people are getting these days. It's like, oh, I'm cute, I'm stay at home, go to Pilates and do the thing, but, like, it's like, you do have to still put in work, even on the woman's side. And everything you're saying, it's like, if that was pushed a little bit more, then it would make more sense. Because marriage is it's one.
Yeah.
Like, you have to both be, it may be different things,
Yeah.
but you're both putting into it. You're both bringing something to the table for the marriage, for the family.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's how it's gotta work. Girl.
I would say I always envisioned that table of being me, my husband is 2 legs of the table, and I'm 2 legs of the table, and what's literally on top of us is God. Like, he's keeping
There
us.
you go.
Like, there's no table without him.
Yeah.
We just sticks, you
I
know?
love that.
So I always think about that. Like, that's the table, you know?
That is the table, ladies and gentlemen. I think that was good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, girl. So wait, give him the table one more time. What is the table?
Okay, so the table, you and your spouse, or you and then your spouse, and then God is the tabletop, right? Because then on the tabletop, what could you put? You eat there. You put your bag there, right? Your money, right?
Mm-mm.
You put your family. You support your family. You support each other's dream. Y'all, I could go on and on.
You can go on.
But the table is important. So don't ask what you can bring to the table. It's how can we build the table?
Woo!
And know that there's no table without God. Because
Oh,
he's on top.
word, baby. Okay, we're going to cut off with that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Stay glossed up. Love y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.